Want to introduce you this morning a great friend of mine and a great speaker. I believe you're going to be blessed. And when I originally had planned the Galatians series, we were going to end last week. We got another week, but that's all right. But I had planned it. He was going to be coming through down. I'm like, man, we got to have you. And been able to spend time with his family this weekend. His three beautiful daughters and one son. I met, this is Bernt King, who is now rightly named Dr. Bernt King. And so we met, in fact, I'll tell you this quick story. I went to Washington Bible College, and while there, I played sports, and one of them was basketball, and I know that's amazing to you guys that I played college basketball, but don't be impressed, it was Washington Bible College. But I remember being asked to take a trip to the airport to pick up a guy who may be coming, and he was a basketball player. He was at LeTourneau University in Texas, so we went to the airport, and we were looking for this guy that we had no clue what he was going to look like. All we knew was pretty tall because he played basketball, and his name was Bernt King, Bernt, B-E-R-N-T. And so I remember standing in the airport, his flight was late, and I'm sitting there saying, man, this guy, if he doesn't show up, he's going to be burnt toast. And so I remember waiting, I met him, and from there began a friendship. He stayed in the dorm with us, ended up coming to Washington Bible College. We graduated college together, went to seminary together. Our families were able to connect, got to know his wife and family, his kids. In fact, I had 3 sons, he had 3 daughters. We were a match made in heaven, and I've already given some pigs. We got some more coming to arrange this thing. And but anyway, we've had such a great time. I talk to him, I would say, almost every other week. We talk and just encourage each other. He's been around, especially in higher education, worked as a VP at Washington Bible College for a while, was at Lancaster Bible College, and is faithful in church ministry, been able to speak all over the world, and we have the privilege of having him this morning. And I'll tell you a quick story. Bernt, just a little side note, Bernt was an All-American basketball player in the National Christian College Athletic Association, which is not the NCAA, it's the NCCAA, just to make sure I got that. He led the nation in rebounds one year, and I always remind him the reason why he led in rebounds was because he didn't let me shoot very much. And if he would have let me shoot the ball, he would not have gotten the rebounds because he would put them up, miss them, and have to put them up again and again and again. And so I always tell him, you should have let me shoot. So we were playing basketball yesterday in my court, and I showed him a little something. I just want to tell you, I represent the west end of Hagerstown pretty well. And we had a great time. It's been great to have his family here. And folks, you're going to be blessed this morning hearing the message God's laid on the heart, some things that he's dealt with, and you're going to be able to hear that. And so if you would, give a warm FCF welcome to now Dr. Bernt King.
So we're going to have to clear up some of these facts. As I recall, the rebounding records were set because Dave was shooting. And I never did think it was much. I mean, I thought it was pretty predictable. He shoots with the wrong hand. And so I didn't think that was too amazing. It is true. We had some early conversations about the daughters and sons, and somehow all my daughters have outgrown all his sons. Can't imagine how that happened. But there's hope. There's hope. There's hope. I said this earlier, and it is very, very true. This stage is humongous. Clearly built for the Vance tribe. And but I'm going to do my best. If you get pain, looking up kind of thing, I'm really sorry. There's no really other medium option for me here. It is a delight to be here with you. My name is Bernt. I've heard all versions. You're not going to offend me in any way. Bernt, Barrett, Beer Nut, whatever. We've heard it all. You can just feel free. Most people, in fact, when I met Dave, is when this whole bear thing started. They asked me how to pronounce Bernt, and I said it was like a bear with an NT, and they go, oh, Bernt. No, not at all, really. And so out of that came, well, we'll just call you Bear, and that's fine. You're not, just whatever, it's fine. And I'm just glad to be here. I will say I have had the opportunity to travel. I grew up overseas. Where I grew up, my name is Normal. It was the country of Sweden. And so I moved here to the U.S. when I was 16. And I would say that I've had a chance to travel and be in a lot of different places. And I will tell you this from the bottom of my heart. I believe you are truly blessed to have a man like Dave Vance in this place because he is incredible. And ever since I met him in that airport and our times in college and seminary and through ministry over the years, Mama Vance, you did great. You did great. Good man, good man. And so it is a joy to be here with you this morning. I want to share with you a passage that's changed my life. It's easy to talk about those passages, humbling, but easy. And so I hope to take you on this little bit of a journey. This is what the creative team here put together for me. Just amazing. It's great. I don't know who's on that crew. If you're in here, you're amazing. But this is where we're headed. And I want to talk to you. We'll try to weave in a little bit about how this relates to me, but more importantly, how I think it might relate to you as well. But it all starts with a story. It has nothing to do with Samson. It's got something to do with a young girl by the name of Jamie. This morning, my family was here earlier this morning. I don't have a chance to introduce them here, but my wife and I met at a dude ranch in Colorado. Long story. Come find me later. We'll talk about it. And we were on this dude ranch, and one of the young ladies that we worked with, her name was Jamie. And Jamie, happy, bubbly person, yay, it's daylight kind of a person. And we typically, as a staff, ate breakfast in the morning together, and sort of a good way. And if you've ever been to Colorado at night, in particular, up in the mountains where this ranch was located, at night, on occasion, you will just have a bright, bright moon. I mean, it's so bright it'll cast a shadow. You can go out walking, and it's just sort of eerie, but really, really cool. And lots of stars, beautiful area. We had just had a night like that. And a bunch of us, were out, laying out behind there's different cabins, and folks are out there. You're just staring at the sky. It's just incredible, the stuff you can see. And we had just had a night like that. It was the next morning. We were all eating breakfast together, and Jamie was off. I mean, normally Jamie's this bubbly, the people, you're like, go away, I haven't had my coffee. She was one of those people. All right, and this morning, she was off. She was quiet. She was reserved. She was like, I'm not a clinical, guy, but maybe depressed in some way. So I just thought, Jamie, I approached her and I said, Jamie, what's going on? I don't know. I'm just dealing with some information that okay. But is everything okay? Is family okay? Yeah, family's fine. It's no big deal. I'm processing. I'm thinking. Well, Jamie, you're a friend. I'm concerned. I want to know, what's going on? How can I be praying for you? I mean, what's going on? She's like, no, I don't want to say. On and on and on and on and on. Finally, it gets to this place where I say, Jamie, enough. What is going on? And she looks at me straight in the eyes, straight-faced, serious as the day is long, and she says, this earth only has one moon. And I said, I'm sorry. One more time. And she said, no, this earth only has one moon. Yes, you're right. And she says, no, you don't understand. She said, my whole life, this calendar, it always says new moon. And I just always figured that we were getting a new moon. And we were out walking last night, and someone said it was the same one coming back around. And she goes, you don't understand. My whole world is just, I don't know. I just never... And I just remember saying, what? How is this possible? How is it possible for a senior at Miami University of Ohio, in college, to arrive at the place where you just discovered we only have one moon? How is that possible? And, we mocked her openly for a significant amount of time, and then thought, at some level, this is really kind of sad. I want to know what day you missed in school where they had this, and how did you piece this together? How did you not connect these dots? We laugh a lot. Last time I saw Jamie, I said, Jamie, I want you to know I'm telling your story everywhere I go. And she's like, oh, no, it's so embarrassing. And her husband says, hey, you want to hear the new one? And I said, there's a new one? Yeah. He said, yeah, apparently they're self phones. And she was like, well, that made sense. You keep them on yourself. And I was like, I got to figure out a way to work that one in. Anyway, so the idea was we had a great chuckle at Jamie's expense. And at some level, while a little tragic, it's really, really funny. And the fact that I had a chance to experience it and be there and, that was great. But there's a sense in which my conclusion coming away from that is, I can't explain it. There's no really rule for this. There aren't many rules in Jamie's life anyway, but there's no really rule for this other than to say that she just didn't get it. She just missed it for whatever reason. She just didn't get it. Now, fortunately for Jamie, it's not a big deal. It's the moon. and she can recover and move on. But there's an aspect, I believe, to the Christian life that is incredibly dangerous and incredibly toxic, and most of us, I believe, walk around because we just don't get it. And it's absolutely tragic. And I stand here today as a victim of somebody, victim and a participant in something where I lived the life for God in a way that I just missed it. Tragically worse than missing the moon, and yet sort of similar in terms of what it is that actually has taken place. I want to use this passage. I want to talk about the life of Samson because I believe he embodies and lives a life the way most of us in a Christian sort of a world context find ourselves living, perhaps in a way that is dangerously far from the God that we seek to serve. So I want to track through this story. As any good, solid, expository preacher, we're going to go through like 4 chapters. Dave said we have until like 2 o'clock. So I'm going to redeem the time, and we're going to roll. This is in the book of Judges. If you have your Bible, open to the clean pages. This is in chapter 14. That's where we're going to start out. And we're going to roll through the story of the life of Samson. I'm not sure when the last time was you read this. When the time the Lord used this passage in my life, I had not been near it in decades, it felt like. I had the story memorized, had image of Samson, sort of similar to this. We're going to pick it up in chapter 14, I'm sorry. In chapter 14, we have right out of the gates, Samson interested in a young lady in Philistine country. There's a lot of history and background to this, and we'll sort of unravel it as we go. But he decides he wants to marry this Philistine lady. And mom and dad aren't really too happy about this idea. Hey, Samson, man, can't you just find somebody up here in Israel? What's the big deal about going down to Philistine country? It's bad news. Samson says, no, I want to go down to this town of Timnah, and I want to find a Philistine woman to be my wife. And there's an interesting statement in verse 4 of chapter 14. It said, they, meaning the parents, did not know that it was of the Lord, because he, meaning the Lord, was seeking an occasion against the Philistines because they were oppressing Israel at this time. It's an interesting statement. We'll come back to that a little bit later on as we go. But Samson's heading down to Timnah with mom and dad to go find this young lady. And a strange thing happens, albeit it's the first strange thing that we have recorded about Samson's life. They're walking along, enjoying this lovely trot, when it says, a lion came roaring upon him. Then you have this statement, the Spirit of the Lord came on him mightily, and he tore the lion apart as one would tear a young goat. How many of you have ever seen anyone tear a lion apart as one might tear a young goat? Me neither. So I'm interested in this expression. What does this mean? Why did he explain it this way? Well, this imagery in this picture, the closest thing we would have to it is he tears this young lion apart in the same way that you tear that chicken apart that's been in the crock pot all day when you get home from church in the afternoon. So it's sort of that, open the lid, you smell, and you go, doink, and you pull the leg off, taste, and say, yep, dinner's on. All right, so it's that doink moment, right? So the lion comes roaring upon him, and Samson goes, doink, and pulls him apart. This is strange. Right, if we had an American who could do this, he'd be on America's Got Talent, and they would just sort of blur out that side of the screen as the lion got dismembered in front of the audience. There would be this sort of an incredible moment. And we read it and we think, we sort of skip right by it because it's clear to us the Spirit of the Lord comes on him and he does this crazy, crazy thing. There's some interesting details after that. He doesn't tell mom and dad what he's done. Why? Well, perhaps because this would have put him in an unclean category for touching a dead animal or being around an unclean animal. And he would have known that that's important to mom and dad. So we'll just leave that out, suggesting perhaps that it's not too important to him. It's important information. Later on, as they go down, they visit this girl. They're going back home. They pass by the carcass of the lion. You remember this story? There's honey in it. So he stops by and he scrapes some out and he eats it, further violating this Israelite laws that he's supposed to keep. He even gives some to mom and dad, and again, doesn't tell them where it comes from. Why? Because it's probably a violation of those same principles. Perhaps suggesting it's not that important to Samson, or at least that he doesn't take it that seriously. He decides this is the girl for him. They're going to get married. So later on in chapter 14, he goes down and participates in what the Philistines would have traditionally done in preparation for a wedding. They would party for 7 days. Archaeology's told us all about it. There would be lots of booze and lots of things involved and violations of lots of additional things that he should not have been taking part of and probably did. So far, his track record suggests he didn't care too much. He probably didn't increase in caring during this season. So he's down and partying in Philistine territory for 7 days in preparation for his wedding. When he decides, really great idea, let's play a game. It's going to be the riddle game. I'm going to pose a riddle. You're going to guess it. If you guess the riddle, I will each go out and buy you a garment of clothing. So you will each get a new outfit out of this deal. If you can't guess it in 7 days, you will each buy me a garment of clothing, which means I get a new wardrobe out of this deal. Okay? And they sign on. Sounds like a great game. Let's do it. So here he goes, right? Here's the riddle. You'll see it in verse 14. Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Brilliant. So for 7 days, these guys are trying to figure out what this means. Perhaps guessing and throwing out different ideas and all these kinds of things. And Samson's just sort of real comfortable with the fact that these guys are so lost, they're never going to get it. They, in turn, go to the bride-to-be. And they say, you got to find this out for us. They threaten her life. They threaten her family's life. And she finally comes to Samson. She cries. He says, look, I haven't even told my parents. Why would I tell you? She says, no, please, if you love me, you'll tell me. So he tells her. And she goes and tells the guys. And the guys show up as the sun is setting on the seventh day. And they say, what's stronger than a lion? And what's sweeter than honey? Samson then uses terminology that I find interesting. If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Moving on. If you have questions about what that means, Reverend Vance will be glad to meet with you after the service today. But look at what happens in verse 19. We have this new strange experience for Samson. The Spirit of the Lord comes on him mightily. We've seen that before. The last time this happened, something strange happened. It happens again here, 19. Spirit of the Lord comes on him mightily. He goes down to another Philistine city not far away, kills 30 people, and brings their clothes back and gives them to the 30 guys he owes clothes to. Just rolls off the tongue so easy, doesn't it? Yeah, he just went down there to another town, killed 30 of them, brought his clothes over and gave them to these people. That is weird. When we find someone like that, we put him in jail. You know, that's crazy. What, he killed 30 people? 30. 30. 30. That's incredible. And he gives them their clothes, these clothes, and he's, this is sort of the end of this grand moment. But you need to know that this begins for Samson, this moment of the Philistines are starting to pay attention to who this person is. Much smaller country in the U.S. If somebody kills 30 people in this country, they're on the news everywhere, right? Samson's no different. Philistines are starting to pay attention to who this guy is. Samson leaves town. The father of the bride gives the bride to somebody else. Samson comes back to reclaim his bride. Dad says, oops, how about her sister? And Samson says, this time I'm going to take revenge on the Philistines, and I'll be right in doing so. And he goes out and he catches a couple hundred foxes, right? This happens towards the end of chapter 15. At the very beginning. Samson, verse 4, he goes out and he catches 300 foxes, takes torches, turns the fox's tail to tail, puts a torch between each pair of tails, and burns the Philistine fields, grains, all that down. So the Philistines, if he wasn't on their radar screen before, he sure is now. The lion thing, we heard about that. That was kind of weird. Then you come in here and you kill 30 of our people, right? Take their clothes, that's not cool. And now you're going to come in here, 300 foxes, burn our fields down, not okay. And watch what happens. Following this moment, the Philistine says, who's done this? They said, Samson. Verse 7, 8, he attacks them, the Philistines, hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and then he goes and dwells in the rock of Edom, cleft of the rock of Edom. So the great slaughter, we don't know how big this great slaughter was, but it was clearly more than 30. And the Philistines now know exactly who Samson is, and he has now made the most wanted list in Philistine country. So the Philistines do what perhaps any nation would do. They send an army, their finest unit, from the Philistine country to go get this guy. He's going to get it. Go get him. So the Philistine army marches over to Judah, right? Nation of Israel. They're marching over here. They're going to come get him at the cleft of the rock of Edom. And the nation of Israel meet them at the border, and they say, ho, 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 what are you guys doing here? And they say, well, we're here for Samson. And the men of Israel say, okay, great. You stay here. We're going to go get him for you. We don't want any trouble. And the Philistines think that sounds like a good idea, so great. Odd moment, 3,000 men of Judah walk down to the rock of Edom to get Samson. Apparently they weren't so sure about this guy either. So they show up at the rock there, and Samson's sitting there fishing or something, and they walk up, and Samson's like, hey guys, and they're saying, hey, the Philistines, there's some people here, they want to talk to you real quick. Would you mind just coming up and saying hi? And Samson says something strange. He goes, promise me you won't kill me. And they say, sure. Will you? No. All 3,000 agree. They take him, they tie him with ropes, and they walk him up toward the Philistines. Now the Philistines see him coming, and the minute they see him coming, great thoughts go through their mind. They're about to be heroes in their own country. Right? They went after the most wanted man in Philistine country. They're about to bring him back. This is exciting. These guys are mighty men of war. They know what this means. Right? Vacation pay, perks, it's all good. So they see him coming, and they're excited. So they're pounding their spears, and they're yelling, woohoo, this is it. It says, as Samson approaches, the Spirit of the Lord comes on him. He breaks the ropes, and it says they fall off of him like flax. It's this idea of a wick of a candle after it's been burned. So I don't know if you ever did that as a kid. You know, the little wick spring goes, doink, you knock the little wick off, and mom gets upset because it takes her 15 minutes to light the candle the next time she goes to it. But that's what happens. These ropes just pop off, all right? And Samson picks up the jawbone of a donkey and kills 1,000 men. A bone. He picks up a bone. Takes on the most advanced army ever with a bone. A bone. About that big. That blows 1,000. Now, the language in the original text is a little bit skewed. We're not really sure. I don't care. It could have been 50. But it probably was closer to 1,000. At least a division is what the terminology seems to suggest. A bone. A bone. I want to pause for just a minute because I think this is an important question to ask. What do you think, let's just assume 1,000 for a second. What do you think number 999 and 1,000 were thinking? What do you suppose was going through their mind? I mean, picture this, right? So you got bodies everywhere. I don't know if you've ever seen 1,000 bodies. I haven't. But you've got bodies everywhere. A nut with a bone. And there's two of you. You get them from the left. What do you... I don't even know what that looks like. Anyway, we're going to come back to that as well. Put that back in. Okay. 1,000 people, end of chapter 15. Samson gets thirsty and has an interaction with the Lord. Chapter 16. We start out with chapter 16 with another young lady that Samson gets involved in, a prostitute down in another Philistine city. He's down there, and the men of Philistia say he's here in town. We know it. So they circle the city. And they say, man, in the morning when he steps out, it's on. You know this story as well, right? He wakes up in the middle of the night. He goes down. He grabs the city gates. It says he takes the gates, the bars, and all. Pulls it up out of the ground, marches it up, and pitches it on the top of Mount Hebron. Now, just to give you an image of what this involves. Do we have any hikers? Appalachian Trail? Sort of-ish. I had a friend who hiked the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine, spent 3 months doing it or so. Maybe it was longer than that, I don't remember. But he would talk about measuring his backpack by the ounces because weight is very, very important when you're talking about distances. And he would talk about how on a good day, in that context, they would wake up when the sun comes up, put the fire out, put all their stuff on, whatever, and hike. And if they hiked all day until the sun went down, they would roughly cover about 26 to 28 miles. And that was a good day of hiking on the Appalachian Trail with a backpack measured to the ounces. What happens here in this section, these couple verses at the beginning of chapter 16? What archaeology has taught us is that what Samson pulled up out of the ground and threw on his back was somewhere between 250 and 257 pounds. The distance that he traveled is about 38 miles, and all of it is uphill. And we don't know if it's true or not, but the Sunday school material I read when I was a kid had the gates up there by the next morning, which means it's entirely possible that he ran for 38 miles with 250 some pounds. That is the strangest thing Okay, so if the lion thing wasn't weird, if the killing the 30 people wasn't weird, if the great slaughter wasn't weird, if the whole bone interaction thing wasn't weird, this is one of the strangest things in the life of Samson that I can even imagine. This guy is unbelievable. It is incredible what this person can accomplish. And yet, for those of us who read this passage, it's clear to us, anyway, that the Spirit of the Lord has this gift in this person, working it towards a goal. It's incredible. It's incredible what he pulls off in this moment. Now, once we get to verse 4, the Samson story becomes a lot more familiar to us. Because now we get involved with Delilah. And he falls in love. That's a great moment. And just to cut to the quick, because we could spend a while on it, we'll just try to cut to the quick. He lies to her, she exploits it. He lies to her, she exploits it. He lies to her, she exploits it. So he tells her the truth. Good plan. He lies to her, she exploits it. He lies to her, she exploits it. He lies to her, she exploits it. So he tells her the truth. That makes zero sense. Unless he thought what he was telling her that fourth go around was no more true than the last three. And these principles of the Nazirite vow that he upheld or was supposed to uphold were not that important to him when he touched the lion. They weren't that important to him when he ate the honey. They weren't that important to him when he partied with the Philistines. And they're not that important to him now when he's talking to Delilah. And tells her what he thinks means nothing. And it turns out to be pretty tragic. I want to pause here again, though, because I think this will help us understand a little bit more about getting an imagery of who Samson is. Do you realize this interaction with Delilah all started because the Philistine leaders in the country were confused about where this man's strength was coming from? That passage struck me, particularly when I was wrestling through with what number 999 and 1,000 were thinking. I always sort of had Samson looking sort of like this. Maybe a little bit more jacked, kind of like Dave. Like a little bit more, like just, got to be careful not to flex in public unless you got an extra shirt in the car, that kind of a guy. So I've always thought that's what Samson looked like. And so I was really confused by things like what number 999 and 1,000 were thinking, or why they're so confused about where the strength came from. What if he didn't look like that at all? What if he was about 115 pounds soaking wet? What if he talked like this? And what if he was like a mom, can I keep him kind of cute? And so the girls like the mom, can I keep him kind of cute? And all of a sudden it makes, some of these stories that I've read, totally different perspective. Like number 999 and 1,000, right? They're standing there, there's dead people all around, and this Samson goes, you step across that line, I'm going to open up a can, right? And he's got this bone, right? And number 999 and 1,000 are thinking, this is crazy. There's just no way. And they go after him and they die. Or these people get so confused, they go for Delilah and they say, find out where his strength lies. Because when you look at him, you just think, he's normal. How is it this person is tearing a lion, killing these people, carrying 250 pounds, 38 miles uphill? What is this? What is going on here? I think it becomes important because what Samson is capable of doing is far beyond, I think, what he looks like. It's far beyond what you and I would consider normal by any stretch of the imagination. You notice the end of his life. After they capture him, his strength's left. They put out his eyes, and they put him in a public place of public humiliation where people spit at him as they walk by. They have an idea one day as they're partying to their God. They reference Samson as the destroyer of our nation. Go get him. Bring him into the temple where they're celebrating their God. And Samson asks for the pillars, asks the young boy to lead him there, prays to God, pushes on the pillars, whole thing comes crashing down. The statement made that Samson kills more Philistines in his death than in his life. And that's it. That's the story of Samson. Now, I will be honest with you, I love the stories and I love to think and dream about what this might have looked like or what that might have looked like. But at the end of the day, when you read the narrative of Samson and you get to the end, it's really a tragedy. It's really an absolute tragedy of what took place in this man's life. And there are some dots that you can connect in his life that I would suggest that Samson lived his life missing out, not getting it in terms of what God had in store for him. In chapter 13, you have an interesting interaction with an angel of the Lord that is sent to Samson's parents. And when he comes to Samson's parents, the angel has 3 messages from them. Number 1, you're going to have a son. Number 2, he's going to be a Nazirite, devoted to God. Some of these principles we've been talking about through Samson's life reflected the fact that he was supposed to be a Nazirite. And number 3, he will begin to deliver the nation of Israel from the Philistines. And I think that, in a nutshell, captures what God had in store for Samson. And I think what Samson managed to do is live a life of complete apathy in regard to some of those things. And when I say apathy, I mean general disengagement. Just not my thing. It starts with his relationship with God. His relationship with God is only evidenced in this story, in these chapters, twice. Once when he's thirsty and thinks he's going to die, and once at the end of his life when he asks for his strength back. Samson reaches dead ends, and at those moments he cries out to God. But every other time in his life, Samson doesn't seem to interact with God at all. He seems to have that under control. I'd like to confess to you today, I have lived my life like that for way too long. I get to places where it's a dead end, and then I sort of wake up and I cry out to God. And I say, whoa, Lord, I don't know how I got here, but I'm in trouble and I need some help. I don't ever ask, or oftentimes find myself failing to ask at critical moments leading up to that. Somehow I'm content to wait till I get into absolute trouble before I actually call on God and work to build that relationship with God. I don't know if you can relate to that or if you've ever been there, but I would suggest that I think one of the greatest risks in our Christian life is that we don't engage with God. We live in sort of apathy towards God. We don't engage with God until we're absolutely in trouble and there's nothing else left. And I think that's the way Samson lived. I know that's the way I've lived my life for seasons of my life. And my intent is to say, and part of what I would like to communicate with you today, is that kind of apathy and that kind of not getting it is incredibly dangerous in the Christian life. If you are in a place where you are disengaged from the God of this universe and that you're going through life thinking that you're working your plan and you're going to make it out and you're going to make it happen and you don't necessarily need God until that last minute, you are at risk for living the same kind of tragedy that Samson lived in his life. Because I believe that kind of apathy is tragic in life towards God. But it's not just God. I think that's true, and that's where it starts in Samson's life. I think it's actually true, not just about God, but also about his plan for Samson. God had a specific plan for Samson. In chapter 13, it's clear. He will begin to deliver the nation of Israel from the Philistines. What would you expect someone to do if they embraced that kind of plan? If I told you today that my plan for you is that you would have a new vehicle by lunchtime, when you left here, what would you do? I would drive to a car lot. I'd start looking. I'd start shopping. I'd start doing things that says, I'm going to get a new car. God says, you're going to start to deliver the nation of Israel from the Philistines. I would expect some sort of military something, or let's get people together. Maybe Samson saying, hey guys, there was this lion that jumped out and I just went, boop. Hey, let's go see if we can do that with the Philistines. That never happens. In fact, if you watch what happened in Samson's life, the only time he ever engages in this plan that I believe God has for him is out of a revenge kind of motive. Watch what happens, especially, oh, you guessed my riddle? I'm going to kill 30 of your people. Oh, you took it out on her family? Oh, now I'm going to go burn your fields down. Oh, you're going to march all the way down here to the rock of Edom. Oh, I'm going to find a bone, you know. Oh, you're going to even, this is the criminal one, at least when it just almost brings me to tears. The last part of his life, right? This is in chapter 16, verse 28. He's standing there. The young boy has led him to the pillars. He's standing there and he's praying, Lord, give me back my strength so I can finally fulfill this purpose that you have for me and finish out these Philistines once and for all. Right? What's it say? Why does he want his strength back? For what? For his eyes. Really? That's what this is all about? The culminating moment of your life? Oh, my eyes. They took my eyes, God. Can I have my strength back? What about the purpose that God had for you? Do you realize that you and I have a pretty clear stated purpose for our life that I believe God holds us accountable to, similarly to the way he held Samson accountable that way? It's in Acts chapter 1, verse 9. It says, you and I will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on us, and you and I will be witnesses to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. There's a plan in place for you and I to engage in with the people around us. And it's possible for you and I to live our lives just like Samson did, generally apathetic towards the plan and purpose that God has for us. And it's tragic. I don't know where you are in your life, but I can tell you that in mine, I've lived plenty of years apathetic towards that plan. And I have found that direction to be empty. I read Samson's story and I relate to it. I think his story was empty. And my charge to you today is not just to ignore apathy against God, but watch for apathy against the purpose that he has for you. Because I believe it's dangerous. And I believe it cheats you out of the life God has for you. There's a third thing that I think is pretty compelling in all of this, and that is that Samson, it's not just about God's plan. It's not just about God that he's apathetic towards. It's not just about the plan and purpose that God has for him, but it's actually about the gifts and tools he was given to accomplish the task. Do you know how often I thought it would be really cool to have Samson's gift? So much so that, God, you can have all the gifts you gave me. Take them all back. I want that one. I mean, how cool would it be to be able to do some of this stuff? The tragedy, though, in all of this is I believe Samson gets to a place where he firmly believes that not only is this plan disconnected from the purpose God has, but this plan, this gift that he's got is actually his own. It's not from God. He believes it's actually his own. He becomes apathetic towards a gift from God and says, this is actually my own. Here's the verse that I think that comes from. In chapter 16, when Delilah has taken this last moment and he lies to her, this happens in chapter 16, and I believe it starts in verse 18. Verse 19, I'm sorry. She lulls him to sleep on her knees, calls for a man, shaves off his hair. In verse 20, she says, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. So he awoke from his sleep and he said, I will go out as before. And there's another statement in there that says he did not know that the Spirit of the Lord had departed from him. How do you get there? How do you reach the place where you have disconnected this marvelous gift that you have with the Spirit of the Lord that's been with you your whole life? Unless you got to the point where you were convinced this was your gift, this was you and not God. And sometimes I believe there is a great risk in the Christian community to become apathetic towards the gifts God has given us that link straight back to the plan he has for us and link straight back ultimately to the God of the universe. I've been around people and I've worked with people, I've talked with people, I've been a part of a group of people who lived life completely apathetic towards those things, as if they don't matter and they don't exist. And I'm here to just remind you this morning that the Spirit of God has a great plan through you to reach a lost and dying world, through gifts that are no less amazing than Samson's, although they may not materialize quite the same way. And I don't know where you are in life that way, but I would just encourage you that God expects more than apathy from us. That God, the God of the universe, anticipates a vibrant relationship with you, not just when you're at a dead end. That the God of the universe has a plan and purpose for you that involves every day, not just on Sundays. And that God of the universe has given you specific gifts, designed gifts, that he intends for you to use in your everyday context as you seek to impact a lost and dying world. May you do ever better at that than I have done. And may we all learn from Samson in this context. I don't know where you're at, but one of the things that I've learned in the last little while is that it's sometimes easy to hear a message like this or process some of this, and then we pray and we go to lunch and we get on with our day. And what I'd like to do is just capture 20 seconds of time and just ask you to confess before God if there's a part of your life, either related to the God of the universe, the plan he has for you, or the gifts he's given you, if there's a part of apathy in your world that you need to confess and get right with God, I'd like to set aside 20 seconds to start that conversation. Because I hope you're not going to finish it in 20 seconds. When this service ends, I'll be up here. I know Pastor Dave will be. If any other church leadership wants to be up, if you want to talk about anything in your world that we could help you with that way, we'd love to do it. But the idea, I believe, in this passage is there's an incredible lesson to be learned about the life God has for us. We're going to take about 20 seconds, and then I'm going to close this in a word of prayer, and then Pastor Dave will be up. So let's take that time right now. Our Father and our God, I confess to you today my own tendency towards apathy. I thank you so much for stories like Samson that wake us up and call us to something more. I pray, Father, for my brothers and sisters here today. I pray in the strong name of Jesus that you would give us wisdom to see you, not just in the moments when we're in a dead end, but every day. That you would give us insight into ways that we can fulfill your purpose and that we can do so with the gifts you've given us. Father, we desperately need your strength for this journey. I pray, Father, that you would protect us from just not getting it and meandering through life, missing out on some of the greatest blessings you might have for us. I thank you for the privilege of gathering together, the privilege of studying, the privilege of growing. I thank you for this place that you've allowed us to be together for a few. I commit this remainder of this day and week to you in Christ's name. Amen.